this is gonna get really fun. Denmark's people are really unique in their cultural, historical, and postmodern upbringing. First of all, the country has about 5.7 million people and is one of the highest taxed countries in the world.
Oh yeah, our taxes. Ooh. How's it going, folks? Jack here with another video. So a lot of you have asked me about my accent for a long time, and I suppose that I may make a video about myself more specifically at some point in time, perhaps next month. I get a GoPro, so I get to show you a little bit around of the country. That may be a little bit of an undertaking, but what I want to talk about today, or rather showcase or react with you today, is Denmark, the country where I'm currently living in. As some of you may know, I'm ethnically born Cameroonian, and I've moved to Denmark like almost 2 decades ago. So this is basically where I've grown up, and I am as Danish as it gets. And part of the reason as to why my accent may vary sometimes is that I struggle with managing different languages, one amongst which is Danish, within this one body. So today we'll be checking out a channel called Geography Now that I remember once using in school, like many years ago, for a paper just to find some pointers that I could add to my report. And yeah, I'm kind of excited of revisiting this channel, but this time on the video that I never watched. But this is Geography Now on Denmark. Let's watch.
Remember in the Angola episode I mentioned how I went to Denmark one time and bought a sandwich that was $21? Well, this was that sandwich, and my reaction was like, $21!
Believe it or not, a $21 sandwich is not that surprising to find here. That's like 150 krona. Why did I pronounce that like was I Swedish? 140 krona. Like, for example, in the city of Elsinore, that is not too far away from where we moved out to, there is this amazing joint, like a food market, an old ship construction yard that was remade into like food market. And there you'll find like $15, I guess, that 100 krona sandwiches. It's not that surprising. Those are like the good Argentinian ones. They taste so good.
Oh, this better be the best sandwich I've ever had in my life.
And
You got lucky.
Nice.
It's time to learn geography now!
Hey everybody, I'm your host Barbie, Legos, Vikings, and Roll med fløjl. We got a lot to cover, so let's jump in.
If I may, pause there again. As an immigrant, the first thing that you will usually be asked to do, I don't know if it's still that topical, but when I came to Denmark, one of the first things that you will always be asked to say was "rødgrød med fløde." It literally translates to red porridge with cream, which is a nice dessert. I guess I haven't eaten it that much, but it's notoriously known for being difficult to pronounce, and I aced that the first time that I had to pronounce it, and it shocked everybody, and that was so funny.
Ah, Denmark, the link between the rest of Europe and Scandinavia. So much to discuss. Denmark is classified as a Nordic country, hence located in the Northern European region, even though it's kind of like the southernmost state in the Nordics.
Yeah.
Full disclaimer, ignore Wikipedia. I'm gonna pronounce the location names in their proper Danish context. Ooh. So here we go. Denmark is made of the Jylland, not Jutland Peninsula that connects to Germany in the south, as well as 1,419 islands. Of those, only 443 are named and 74 are inhabited, with the largest island being Sjælland, not Zealand, which is not to be confused with Dutch Zeeland, which is not to be confused with New Zealand, although they did get their name.
I can't take it! That's too much information!
It is connected to Fyn Island, not Finn Island, by the Great Belt Bridge, completed in 1998. The country—
An amazing feat of engineering. Hard to work on that. Or at least not that directly. Okay. Damn. That would have been nice. But I got to do a little paper, a little side project on that when studying at the University of Technical University of Denmark, DTU. That's where every engineer like to go to. But also the richest university in Denmark, they have so much money. Just as a little anecdote, I shifted from engineering studies to studying physics, which is the thing that I majored in. And a lot of it's kind of hilarious, at least to me. A lot of the exercises that we had to deal with, or sometime even during our exams, were based on subject that the DTU, that university, had worked on. So think about that. Like you need to ace for your for your class, but you have to work on the project that's been done by another university. That's some king shit.
The country is divided into 5 regions, the capital being Copenhagen, located on Sjælland. Copenhagen is home to a myriad of historical sites, palaces, statues, residential units that are all the same height and style, with pockets of colorful, quaint, cozy shops and cafes, and dangerous bicycle lanes that you are not supposed to walk on. Now this is where things are going to get a little spiced up, and by spiced up I mean freezing cold and covered in whale blubber. Denmark, for those of you who didn't know, is a kingdom, one of the last surviving ones in Europe, and is currently under the headship of chain-smoking Queen Margaret II. These still fall under Danish sovereignty and make up the massive Greenland island and the little Faroe Islands. Both of these places are radically different from mainland Denmark. For one, Greenland is primarily inhabited by native Inuit tribal peoples that live on the island and is 80% covered in ice year-round. The Faroe Islands are a conglomeration of 20-ish mystical, cloudy, windy islands that have this crazy-looking lake that looks like...
Oh, it's so cool. Oh man, the Fairy Islands, as they are called, it's so beautiful. It's like close to Iceland, like in look-wise, but of course the weather is a lot different, and the language as well, but he'll get to that at some point.
Like it's about to spill over the cliffs into the ocean. These 2 areas have their own self-governing home rule, otherwise only depending on Denmark for military, justice, currency, and foreign affairs. Otherwise, I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, historically, they did try to kind of create an empire by colonizing parts of the Caribbean, Ghana, India, and then in the Nicobar Islands in the Indian Ocean, but they kind of ran out of money and ended up selling everything to other countries. Too bad. It would be awesome to see people in the Indian Ocean speaking Danish.
I mean, to be fair, Denmark was very big at some point with Margaret I and the Kalmar Union. I think that I brought this up once. Perhaps was it during the Martin Stopin's video on Finland? Perhaps it might have been that. But during the Kalmar Union, like 1390, like she was the regent of that massive union that had most of the Nordic countries included in one. So Denmark had a lot of influence. Of course, a lot of that got lost. My joke used to be that it was because of some Frenchman who walked up to Denmark wanting to launch his Napoleonic Wars and cracked the whole thing. But of course, a lot of that had crumbled already by that time. But speaking of the reach that Denmark also had, of course, there was the colonization part down in Africa and Ghana, like he mentioned, with places like Christiansborg. It's stupid that there's actually a location like that in Ghana. But specifically to the American audience, Vikings for one, or one specific member of them, Liv Erikson, found the Americas first, or at least is credited for having done that, which is why there are some locations in the US that actually have Danish names. So that's also a cool fact.
Nonetheless, mainland Denmark is kind of like a fast-moving economic machine. Let's talk about how. Now, when it comes to land makeup, Denmark is pretty flat. I mean, the highest point, Møllehøj, is only about 170 meters tall, and it looks like this. Otherwise, only about 13% of the country is forested, including the tree plantations, and the rest is pretty much used for agriculture that can produce enough food to feed about 15 million people. It's about 3 times the size of their entire population. Good for you,
throw a lot of food out.
One thing Denmark is actually famous for growing is non-produce plants like grass, fodder, and Christmas trees. The highly sought-after Danish Nordmann fir has been classified as the Rolls-Royce of Christmas trees, and every year investors from Germany, the Netherlands, and even the UK jump in at the end of November and grab whatever they can before it's gone. Now, one thing you need to know is that, like many other areas in the Nordic region, Denmark's weather can be quite dreary. First of all, Denmark is the only Nordic country that doesn't really get a lot of snow. Denmark is kind of like the mud pit located below the jet stream blocked by Norway and the UK. This means that even though it gets really cold, pressure systems really cause snow. This is also pretty much why everybody dresses like a J. Crew fall fashion line model on the streets.
Okay, to be completely fair, I fell prey to this at some point too. Like, we like our coats, especially during like not spring, autumn and winter. Those are cozy, but it sucks to ride one of those when you have a fixie. So yeah, at some point I shifted that completely and changed to like another type of active wear attire, which is basically what I wear all the time right now. But yeah, Danes do still love that, and it's a 7-year-old video, so I mean, the trends have stayed the same.
If you're gonna get wet and freezing, you may as well look good while doing it. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, pretty much the rest of Denmark is just rolling green plains with sandy beaches and quirky little islands that people like to hop over for camping trips in the summer. If we were gonna talk about Greenland and the Faroe Islands, we would get a radically different story of mind-boggling, captivating cliffs, bluffs, sea stacks.
Oh, is he going to say the word? The million? Or what was it? It rhymes with a Disney movie. Mulan. I don't know why that took me so long to figure out.
It's glaciers, fissures, icebergs, and mountains. If you don't know what a Mulan is, it's not this, but this.
This Mulan is large enough to swallow a school bus.
Yeah, beautiful.
But we'll have to say that for another video that'll come out in 9,374 years. In the meantime, let's talk about the people.
Oh boy.
Now, this is gonna get really fun. Denmark's people are really unique in their cultural, historical, and postmodern upbringing. First of all, the country has about 5.7 million people and is one of the highest taxed countries in the world.
Oh yeah, our taxes. Oh. I think 3 years ago I made a video about that where like Fox News were losing their goddamn mind about the fact that supposedly younger people did not want to work, which we do. We have some of the best education here, and where we actually graduate, we have our unemployment rate is literally less than 3%. But like our prime minister likes to say, we can do better than that. Like there are a lot of discussions on whether or not it's too much that we're paying in taxes and whatnot. I mean, it has helped a lot, but yeah. Personally, at the point where I'm right now, I guess speaking of in a position of privilege, I think it's fine. But yeah. Anyways, let's keep going.
About 89% of the country identifies as ethnically Danish, about 11% are others. Some of the largest groups in the other category being the Polish, Germans, Turkish, Romanians, Iraqis, and Afghans. Now when it comes to Danish culture,
Cameroonian are not even mentioned because there are like 20 of us in this country.
There's a lot behind it, but in a nutshell, Vikings. Vikings pretty much had their start in what is now present-day Denmark, and whom pretty much dominated all of the Nordic regions as far as Newfoundland and Canada to Estonia. Which is why most of the Nordic states and regions can pretty much understand each other when they talk. Danes, Swedes, Norwegians, and Icelanders can generally understand each other as they have the same basic linguistic structure. Sure, there are subtle discrepancies, but overall they can kind of get by conversation.
I can understand some Swedish and Norwegian. It's not as melodic as Swedish is, so it's like it's easier. Let's just put it that way. Also, I like the nice note there when neither Norwegians nor the Swedish got credit for being Vikings at all. Like the sagas mentions them a lot. Ragnar Lothbrok had children with everybody. Well, according to the sagas as well, you know.
Granted, there's a saying, the Norwegian and Swedish languages sound like dancing fairies, whereas the Danish language sounds like a dude with a potato in his mouth. By the way, anybody who wants to learn Danish, full disclosure, it's gonna suck. The J makes the Y sound, the Y makes the U sound, the V makes a W sound, the R makes a R sound, the H is silent half the time, a ton of the letters are never even used, and don't even get started on A, U, and O. I kind of discovered a little trick though when I went to Denmark. When speaking Danish, all you really have to do is kind of like pronounce the first part of the word that you think makes a sound, and then just kind of like give up on the rest of the word.
Yes, my man knows the trick. Or at least if you're from Copenhagen, that's how you speak. Like half the words you're just like, oh. I'm not saying that it's a good thing that Copenhagener, people from Copenhagen, speak like mumble rappers half the time, but god damn, it is still better than the Jylland accent or the Jutland one. That's a doozy.
For example, Copenhagen, Nybroggen, Løvstrand. I'm literally just listing names of places in Copenhagen that I've been to. Honestly though, you really won't have much of a problem getting around if you speak English. Over 80% of the entire country, mostly the younger generation, speaks proficient English to the point where they don't even need subtitles when watching American TV shows and movies. Also, keep in mind, Greenland has its own language that is completely unintelligible as it's an Inuit language closer to the indigenous Inuktitut and Yupik languages found in Canada and Alaska. And Faroese is pretty hard for most Danish people to grasp as it actually has more words rooted in the ancient Norse language, and it's actually more intelligible to Icelandic. Back to culture though, Denmark has definitely left its mark, whether it's notable figures like author Hans Christian Andersen, philosopher Søren Kierkegaard, or whether... Can you pronounce his name? That's actually how you pronounce his name. Wow. It's not Søren Kierkegaard. It's... Or whether it be the invention of the loudspeaker, or Legos, or their love of handball, their impeccable...
Oh, I am offended here. Fine, you mentioned the Lego and the handball, but mind you, could you please bring forth some of the physicists, the astronomers? Don't worry, that was not a walk ride, that is the actual name of a Danish astronomer. There's of course Niels Bohr, who gave us the model of the atom. Hans Christian Ørsted, who found the relationship between magnetism and electricity, basically paving the way to electromagnetism. The university that I went to for my physics degree. And of course, we have none other than Tycho Brahe, absolute race king. The guy who was given his own laboratory in a castle on his private island, Dane, by the state because he was such a race beast. There's this fun little story about him. He's an astronomer. A fun little story about him that during like a dispute with some colleague or like a fellow student in Germany, they ended in a sword fight where then pieces of his nose got cut out. So, for example, if you're like a One Piece fan, you will know the character Frankie. Like the inspiration for that design comes from him because Tycho Brahe got a metal alloy on his nose. So like, those are people.
Architecture, love of cuisine. Noma in Copenhagen, by the way, being voted the best restaurant in the world with plates that feature live ants and moss. If you're really gonna get a feel for Danish culture, though, you kind of have to know about janteloven and hygge. The funny thing is, Danes are kind of brought up in a social mindset that is kind of integrated into their subconscious, known as janteloven, which kind of translates to something like, you are not better than the crowd, which I know sounds kind of depressing, but it's really trying to instill a sense of equality and communal cooperation. Hygge translates to something like spend good times with friends and family, and it's like a cozy thing. Of course,
it's like there were some years ago there were huge campaigns on how to hygge, how to have fun and how to spend time with each other and stuff like that. Like it was a little bit sickening because it was everywhere, but yeah, it was a nice reminder of that.
Denmark is known for being ranked one of the happiest overall countries, even though they are also kind of one of the highest ranked consumers of antidepressants as well. But hey, they still pull off everyday life looking oh so good, even if it's during one of those really loud annual emergency drills.
Okay, Christine, explain what's happening right now.
Denmark is testing the sirens for warfare. Yeah, when we're being attacked by the Germans again.
I'm scared.
Oh god, that has got to be one of the worst experiences to have as a foreigner. Here, I think that like every year I tend to catalog those. Just a habit of a thing to do when you're bored, I guess. Found it here. The national alarm. It gets sent to you sometime before just so you get to prepare.
I'm scared. I'm really scared right now.
Let's run to the security basement.
Down to the bunker.
The Germans are coming! Speaking of Germans. Now, we all know that one person we're all kind of jealous of because they're kind of rich, well-adjusted, and have a ton of friends, and they're like kind of good-looking. Well, that's Norway. Denmark is a little bit rockier. No, but seriously, for such a small nation, Denmark has a huge entourage of friends, and it's almost kind of hard for anyone in the world to dismiss them at a party. As a founding member of the EU and NATO, Denmark has had roots planted in diplomacy for decades. First off, Denmark generally gets along with Germany. Business between the Germans is a hugely integral part of their economy, and Denmark acts like the gateway to Scandinavia for them and the rest of Europe. The US and the UK are incredibly close as both tangible and cultural imports have been established for centuries. For a while, the Danes...
Danish bacon! It took me some years to realize that that was actually a slur for the cops in the UK.
Even took over parts of the UK, which is why to this day the English language still retains hundreds of Old Norse-derived words like
Wednesday,
leg, dog, and window. The closest friends, though, would have to be the Nordic countries.
Oh, wait a minute. Really? I didn't know that that was the etymology of window. That it was actually... Wow. Wow. I knew that the names of the days, for example, came from the Norse gods, so that makes perfect sense. Thor's Day, Woden's Day, all that stuff. Friday, but Friday. But window and dog. Hund. Oh, hound. Oh my god. That's great.
Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Iceland. These four are without a doubt Denmark's closest friends, even though Sweden and them have kind of had more wars and battles historically than any other two states in the world. They've moved on and grown up. Out of the Nordic countries, though, Norway would probably be considered their best friends. Danes are obsessed with Norwegians and often consider Norway the girlfriend they took away from Sweden. In conclusion, Denmark is the rich, rainy rascal that always seems to show up on time for every party, but somehow gets all his work done in an organized, efficient manner. Stay tuned, Djibouti is coming up next.
Ooh, Djibouti. Wow, that was highly educational. One of the great things that I think has played to Denmark's benefit is that despite the country not having many resources aside from, what should we say, mink, or at least we used to have mink, the current green energy that we're exporting right now to the rest of the world has been the fact that we've used our heads, right? Design and stuff like that has been the greatest export that Denmark has had. So like innovation on that front has been a great thing, and it's put it on the map for many things, and it's been great. But guys, this has been a little video from Geography Now on Denmark. Perhaps next time we'll get to talk about Cameroon, where I came from, so tune in for that later on. But if you liked the video, as always, please give the video a like and tell me, what is your experience with Denmark? If you're Danish, of course, I'd like to know in the comment section below as well. Wish you all to have a wonderful day. See you guys in the next one. Bye.